Hello guys, welcome back to Fanfic Dojo. Today we will be listening to What If Naruto Faced His Past Again Part 1. In Konoha, the people were doing their last business before going home to their families, and in the Hokage Tower did their Hokage, Sarutobi Konohamaru, watch them. He sighed slightly, turned away from the window and shifted his attention to the man sitting on the other side of his desk. Life is wonderful. The man snorted and looked at the younger one. Life is nothing, he replied, his voice deep. Konohamaru shook his head from the sentimental feelings and took up the cup sitting on the desk. How's Shikamaru? The Rokudime finally asked. As fine as you can be in his situation, the man replied. Talk to him yourself. I would if I could, but he isn't talking to anyone in this village but you, Naruto-Nisan. Uzumaki Naruto shrugged gracefully and picked up the cup he had, filled with sake as opposite of Konohamaru's tea. The energetic blonde everyone had come to know was long gone at the age of 32. In fact, that person had perished when Naruto was 15 years old. The reason for that was the brutal death of Jiraiya that Naruto had witnessed. Now the blonde was a hardened shinobi with little respect for his enemies' lives. His bright blue eyes had faded into a frosty blue. They were cold most of the time, but Konohamaru knew there was warmth left in them. Naruto's now long blonde hair was put up in a ponytail and ended somewhere around his waist. His choice of clothing was something that stood out amongst shinobis, a complete white set. The trench coat had wide arms and ended around his ankles, a fishnet shirt, white tight pants and knee-high, white combat boots with steel at the bottom. The only clothing that was not white beside the fishnet shirt was his elbow-long black gloves, mostly hidden by the arms of the coat. What had stood out the most at Naruto before was his birthmarks, but they had faded with time, leaving smooth skin behind. As a child, he had been tan, but now his skin had taken a ghostly pale color due to many missions and travels had been made by night over the years, and his eyes sometimes appeared as shining orbs in the darkness because of that. Shining orbs in the face of a corpse. Maybe not the most flattering comment, but at least it scared his enemies shitless. Instead of kunais and other weapons, Naruto wore 10 scrolls around his waist, all carefully prepared by himself. Naruto-Nisan. Naruto looked up from his cup, and into Konohamaru's eyes. How did it feel when Jiraiya-sama died? The younger man asked. As it felt for you when Sandaime-sama died. Respect for his elders may have been slow, but better late than never. I hardly remember that, Konohamaru said quietly. It's been so many years. Why are you getting all sentimental for? Naruto said. I don't have all day. Are you leaving again? I'm free to travel wherever I want to. I know that, the younger male said. It's just you've been gone for over a year, and you don't even want to stay overnight. Naruto looked at him and said. It's not your fault if that's what you think. He took a sip of his cup. Then whose fault is it? Konohamaru asked. Just the village in general, the blonde said with a shrug. Too many bad memories. Too many deaths, the Hokage added. That too, Naruto agreed with a small tilt of his head and then drained the sake. The Hokage knew his friend was leaving. When will you be back? Konohamaru asked. I don't know, Naruto replied as he rose up. Say hello to everyone from me. Why don't you say hello yourself for once? Konohamaru asked. You haven't seen anyone except Shikamaru and me in almost 6 years. I don't want to see them. Whatever is left of them. At least say hi to Shikamaru yourself this time, the Rokudime pleaded. Knowing that someone still cares will keep him from doing something stupid. If it makes you feel better, fine, the blonde said. I'll go and play some shugi with him. Konohamaru rose up and walked up to the man. For a long time the brunette had admired this man. First it was a childish one, then it turned into real, almost hero worship. He saw his idol grow up to be one of the best, only to say, no, when he had the chance to become Hokage. He was fine with being nothing, but Tsunade had not allowed that. With the nickname of one of the second-generation Sanins, and the forced-on title of Kage, Naruto had been free to leave whenever he wanted. And he had left, for years. By the time he came back for the first time, Konohamaru was about to be named Hokage in front of the whole village, one of the youngest Kages to be a leader over a village. When he had looked down at what was now his people, he had spotted a familiar blonde-headed man. Naruto had looked up at him, and smiled for real. That was the last real smile Konohamaru had seen Naruto make in front of him, and that was 10 years ago. Nara Shikamaru was a lost cause according to most people. Having witnessed his best friend Choiji's brutal murder had made the famous Junin shut down completely. He had resigned and locked himself up in his house, sitting in front of his shugi board most of the time. Everyone felt sorry for him, not that he himself cared what they thought. At the moment, he was doing what he almost always did when suddenly a white blur came and settled itself across the board. Naruto leaned his chin into his palm and said, "What are you doing inside on such a nice evening?" "Naruto," Shikamaru said, slightly surprised. He had not expected the man, as Naruto tended to show up at random times. Mostly those random years was once or twice a year. One and only, the blonde replied and looked at him. His blue eyes were glittering. "Come on, let's go start watching." "No, no one will see us, and I have the feeling Gaara will join us." Shikamaru looked at him and said, "Why do you care? Why are you still asking that?" Naruto huffed. "If you continue with that, I will start hitting you at some point." Shikamaru's lips twitched into a small smile and he rose up. The blonde followed and continued, "Want anything with you?" "No, I'm good," the brunette said. The shadows twisted around Shikamaru's feet as he walked. Gaara swept a piece of hair away from his eyes and continued to watch Konoha. The sun had gone down, giving way to darkness and bright stars. "Did you wait long?" A small smile crept up on his face as he heard his friend's voice. He turned around and shook his head. Naruto nodded and said, "Brought Shikamaru with me." The brunette raised a hand as a greeting and Gaara nodded to him. "How did you know I was here?" the redhead asked. "I saw with my inner eye," the blonde said and sat down, face straight. The redhead raised an eyebrow at him. "Kidding. Felt your chakra." "Thought so," Gaara muttered. Shikamaru followed after Naruto, sitting down as well, and the three men were quiet as they watched the sky or the village. "Do you sometimes wish everything was different?" Gaara suddenly asked. "Every day," Shikamaru said. "Every second," Naruto continued. "Many people died. How many didn't have to?" "Kankuro," Gaara whispered. "I still miss him, even if he's been dead for 19 years. "Choji," Shikamaru said, his eyes clouded. "Asuma, hell, I even miss that pervert to teacher Kakashi." "Old good Kakashi," Naruto said. "I miss Iruka too. The academy teacher from hell. Man, even Tsunade was scared shitless when he was pissed off," the brunette said with a chuckle. "He even made me shake in fear once he got started," Naruto said and smiled. Nowadays he only smiled in Gaara's and Shikamaru's presence. "I don't doubt if he comes here right this very instant, he would have me shaking as a leaf within minutes." Gaara laughed softly at that. "What would you give for a second chance?" he asked the blonde man. "I dunno," Naruto said. "My life wouldn't do, then I can't do anything. But I could sacrifice this." "This?" Shikamaru asked. "My reputation I gained from the war, from the training with Tsunade," Naruto said. "The connections I have, my boring lifestyle. I could give everything in my life up," Gaara said. "What matters that I've been a cage when those I love and want to protect are already dead? I'm a good for nothing now," Shikamaru said. "Hell, I can't even fight without remembering all the times when my friends died. If I could just see them again, alive and well, I could fight even fucking Orochimaru or Akatsuki myself." "Looks who's having too big confidence," Gaara said and Shikamaru chuckled. "Well, I can't help it," he said with a shrug. They sat in comfortable silence for a long time, all content to just sit and watch whatever they wanted. What's the noise? Naruto suddenly asked. They looked around, and suddenly a blinding light surrounded them. Naruto felt Gaara's body pressed against his own and acted on instinct. His hands shot out and grabbed both of them. Shikamaru's hands gripped his arm tightly and Gaara fisted a hand into the white trench coat. Then it was all darkness. Naruto groaned and opened his eyes to a slit. He was lying on something rather cramped, and it was hard and uncomfortable and he had a bad feeling about it all. The air was humid, he had felt that before, and he sat up, ignoring the twinge in his back. His eyes opened a bit, and looked around. They slowly widened, in shock and he whipped around. No way. No fucking way. He was in his old apartment, and with old, he really meant old. The one he had lived in until he was 15, the one he had been forced to live in as long as he remembered. But that was not the most shocking thing. The building was not supposed to exist in his time. So, what the fuck was he doing here? Oh, Gaara moaned at the pounding of his head, wondering if he had hit it so hard it had split apart on him. He moved and bumped into a body. He opened his eyes and found Shikamaru in the same condition as himself. They sat up slowly and the redhead looked around. Where are we? He asked. Shikamaru looked around and blinked. Then some more. He looked around again and Gaara waited patiently for the man to speak. And speak he did. This looks like the forest just outside of Konoha. Oh, Naruto checked the date on the calendar that was on the wall. It was the day before his test to see if he would become a genin. Okay. What the hell? What kind of trouble had he managed to land himself in? Closing his eyes, he took a deep breath and then searched for Gaara's and Shikamaru's chakra signals. Finding them outside of Konoha, his eyes opened and he walked over to the window, knowing he had to do some serious thinking later. For once, where was his younger self? Had no one felt them arrive? He did not mean to brag or anything, but 3 unfamiliar chakra signals could not just arrive without suspicion rising. But for now he just wanted to have some sense of reality, and that meant getting Shikamaru and Gaara. They would probably be as confused as him, and that was somehow comforting to know. Plus he would not be able to focus alright unless he knew they were both alright. He was under a henge was a Junin before he had even gotten fully out of the window, and jumped up at a nearby roof. He jumped down near the gate and started running. The Chunins by the gate did not try to stop him so he continued. Rushing in the woods nearby he searched for the 2 familiar chakra signals. Someone's coming. Gaara hissed and stood up. Shikamaru got up as well but the dizziness settled in for him and he braced himself against a tree. Gaara looked around, ready for fighting, sand swirling around his feet. Gaara, Shikamaru, Naruto. They both asked before they recognized the blonde's chakra signal. The blonde released the henge and came to a stop next to them. Shikamaru regained his balance and stepped away from the tree. Alright, what's going on? Gaara asked. You won't believe me, Naruto said. What? They replied. We're 20 years in the past. Oh, why do I have to play the mother? Shikamaru groaned. Because I'm the kid, and can you see Gaara as a mother hen? Naruto said. Mommy. Call me that, and I'll strangle you blondie, the brunette warned. Yeah, try it, woman. Stop fighting, the redhead growled. We're entering the store now. They did so after one last warning growl from the father. Naruto had a henge so he looked like a 10-year-old boy with short, brown hair and blue eyes. Gaara had a henge as well with black hair and blue eyes while Shikamaru had a henge on him to make himself look like a woman who had long, curly brown hair and green eyes. They walked into the teenage section and let Naruto free. What should I have? He asked the 2. It's your choices, the redhead replied. It was not really hard for them to decide how to proceed. They were not going to let nature, or fate, or whatever, take its course and cause it all to happen. What was confusing though was Naruto was pretty sure there were 2 Shikamarus and 2 Gaaras but not a second Naruto. He had seen the younger Shikamaru before so there was no reason there would not be a second Gaara. One reason was Kyuubi. The fox hated competition, especially from himself, and might as well have gotten rid of the second Naruto. There was nothing to worry about when it came to Shukaku though. The demon was too bloodthirsty to even care about competition, and he was not strong enough to remove a person when locked inside his vessel. And why Naruto suspected Kyuubi was because the fox had been strangely silent, only giving short answers during these chaotic-like hours, just telling the man not to worry about the loss of his younger self. The man was not so sure he should just forget about his younger self. Naruto remembered himself as a loudmouthed brat, but he was not an evil loudmouthed brat, just slightly misbehaving. Kyuubi had by then quite shortly told him to shut up, and the blonde man knew better than to argue with a grumpy demon, unless he wanted to go deaf. Kyuubi had a shrill voice when he was upset, and it got quite annoying to listen to it after a while. He had decided to let the subject rest for a bit. So now Naruto walked around and picked clothing for his new wardrobe while Shikamaru and Gaara waited. Nothing too outrageous for his style. He did not want to get noticed any more than necessary. Finally he was done and Gaara took the clothes to pay them. For once in this time, Naruto did not get glares from the clerk. Instead he smiled at the boy before summing up how much it would cost. And what do you know? It did not cost nearly as much as Naruto usually had to pay. Ah, the wonders of henge. After that they quickly moved to Naruto's apartment. They changed back and disappeared from the street before anyone came. Seated in the tiny apartment, Naruto wished he had some sake. He would not complain having a jar of Tsunade's special one. He had inherited a bit of her drinking habits as he got older. Shikamaru chewed on his nail and said, "So, what am I and Gaara gonna do? We have enough money to buy Konoha," Naruto said with a snort. "Buy a house, but be under henge. Do I have to be a woman?" Shikamaru whined. "How about a father with his teenage son?" Gaara asked. "Sounds good," Naruto replied. "You can be the teen, Shika." "Understood," the brunette said, saluting. Gaara rolled his eyes. "How are you going to fix everything without blowing your cover?" "I have a plan," the blonde said. "Trust me." "Yeah, I was afraid of that," Shikamaru muttered, and Naruto could not help but glare at the brunette. "Like that'll scare me." Naruto ignored the snickering brunette, as well as his desire to smack said brunette over the head, and dragged instead forth a scroll and opened it. He rolled it up until he came to a certain symbol. He unsealed it and gave a communicator to Gaara. "It will go faster to speak with each other with that in case of an emergency. You will keep that with you at all times," he said. "Try not to be apart too much." "Will I be a genin or what?" Shikamaru asked. "Do you want to be?" "I don't really know," the brunette replied. "It would be pretty troublesome going through it all again." "You can be a normal, lazy teen," Naruto said. "I can know you, so I'll visit you looking like my 12-year-old self." "So it's really no second Naruto as it is two of me and two of Shikamaru?" Gaara said. "Something like that," the blonde replied. "I don't know why, but I'm not too interested in finding out." "Neither am I," the red-headed man said. "Troublesome," Shikamaru muttered. The two Jinchurikis could not help but agree. Checking himself over in the mirror, Naruto adjusted the clothing once more before making sure his henge looked alright. He had been really small at the age of 12, he realized with a sigh. Not really something he could do about it though. The only thing he could chance was the way he had been dressing himself when he was young. Orange was a color he liked, but not a color to wear if you were a shinobi. So now he was outfitted in a white t-shirt, black baggy pants and a dark brown hooded jacket. Not any outstanding colors and clothing that could melt into the environment if needed to. He was still a bit awkward with the pouch and his scrolls he had sealed into another scroll, fastened near his body where he would notice the moment it was removed. Satisfied, he moved out. Oh, Naruto was one of the first people to arrive in the classroom, for a change, and he seated himself in the back where no one would bother him. When Shino entered the room, he could not help but stare at the boy. The bug user had died so young, only 15 at the time. This time though, it would work out better. It had to be. Naruto may look cold in front of others, and uncaring, but all the deaths around him had nearly broken him down. The first time Kyuubi had helped him through it, however, he was not sure he could take a second time. Iruka entered the room after a number of other kids in Naruto released a contented sight, the first adult who accepted him for who he was. He had not seen Iruka in 14 years except on the few rare pictures of the man. The Chunin spotted him and stared. Naruto mused the man must have some kind of radar when it came to the blonde. Iruka always knew where Naruto was, not matter how hard the blonde had tried to hide. That was probably why they always sent out the man when Naruto had done a prank in the past. It usually took Iruka between 5 to 10 minutes to find him. The teacher rose up and walked up to him. Naruto. Yeah, he replied, looking up at the brunette. You're wearing normal clothes. Iruka's face said that was the shock of the year. Naruto had the urge to grin, but kept it in. Yeah, did I miss something here? The Chunin asked, moving down so he could look Naruto in the eyes. He looked worried, wondering and relieved at the same time, which only Iruka could pull off. Nope, Naruto replied. I just stopped liking the others. Naruto, you've been dressed in them for years and yesterday you still loved them. Overnight thing, Naruto said and waved his hand. Plus a shinobi doesn't dress like an idiot, Iruka-sensei. Ah, how he had missed saying that name. Iruka looked at him oddly, but the boy just smiled a bit. Dazed, the Chunin smiled back and wondered since when the smile looked so natural on Naruto's face. Naruto came out from the room with a shiny new Hitai-8 with him. Some of the students stared at him because they never expected the idiot, the dead last, to pass. He just ignored them and sat down next to Hinata. She blushed and stuttered out. See, congratulations, Naruto-kun. Thanks, he replied. You made it as well. I guess, she said, pushing her fingers together nervously. Her Hitai-8 was around her neck as she did not know where else to put it. I bet your father will be really proud over you, he said, and Hinata looked at him. Naruto had always thought Hiashi was a crappy father, but learned later on he just did not know how to express his feelings. He had loved his eldest daughter deeply but had put too much pressure and acted a bit too cold to her. However, the blonde-haired man knew Hinata was strong despite being constantly pushed around by her family. Her face altered in front of him, replaced by an older one. The face smiled. Even in the midst of a battle did Hinata smile. Perhaps he will, Hinata said, breaking him out from his thoughts, and the elder Hinata's face vanished. Naruto nodded at her and just then Iruka began to speak. The man in disguise saw Mizuki's angry face and had a good hunch that the man was going through with stealing the seal tonight, even if he had no one to trick to steal it for him. He needed to get in contact with Gaara and Shikamaru for the plan. Oh, Sarutobi, the third Hokage, sat by his desk and sighed deeply. Paperwork was long and boring, especially for a man who had no interest in doing it. He had never been interested in the paperwork, and wondered why most of his time as a Hokage was spent by a desk. Oh, right, they were not at war. When it was peace, it meant the Hokage was sitting and doing paperwork. Well, he preferred peace over war any day. But the paperwork was killing him, or at the very least threatening to drive him insane. Suddenly 3 of the windows flew open and in came 3 blurs. Sarutobi had no time to react before 3 men stood before him. The aged man blinked owlishly at the rather strange sight. One of his hands settled on a kunai. He might be able to take out one in case of an attack. The man standing in front of his desk was dressed in purely white, a sight rarely seen when it came to shinobis. White tight pants, knee-long white combat boots, a white tight t-shirt and a white trench coat. His waist-long hair though was bright blonde, and his skin was so pale he looked a bit sick. His eyes were frosty blue, making the pupils stand out in his face. He was looking passively at the Hokage. The man to his left was all black. He had the same sort of clothes as the man in white, only his clothing was black. He had no scrolls though, instead he a pouch that Sarutobi could only speculate of the contents. His coal-black hair reached to his shoulders, his skin light tan and his eyes black and emotionless. But on the trench coat he had a hood unlike the man in white. The third man was dressed in red. He had loose-sitting red pants with high red combat sandals, a red tight turtleneck shirt and a looser, deeper red vest that ended around his ankles. He wore no pouches from what the Hokage could see. His red hair was short and spiky, and he had clear red eyes, though turquoise around the pupils. His skin was rather pale and he dark rings under the eyes, like he had not slept for a long time. Sarutobi did not know what to say at the sight of the three strange men. He regretted not letting his bodyguard stay in the office when the blonde man reached for a scroll. But he only put the scroll onto the desk and said with a deep, monotone voice, "Read it, Sarutobi-sama." Sarutobi took the scroll with hesitation and saw it was concealed with a blood seal. He looked up sharply at the blonde man but said man made no movement. The black-haired man looked bored while the red-haired stared at the aged man impatiently. The Hokage unsealed it with a quick flash of his own blood and it opened. As he read it, his eyes widened. Each word made him more astonished and confused. 15 minutes later, he finished the reading and looked thoughtfully at the three men. "I see," he said slowly. "It's much to take in but, shall we start with introductions?" The blonde man looked at the Hokage and said, "I'm Shiroi." "I'm Kuroi," the black-haired man said. "And I'm Akai," the redhead said. Sarutobi stared at them. Well, at least the names were easy to remember. "Your real names?" he finally asked. "Should not be mentioned here," Shiroi replied. "But you know now of our position, and our intentions. You can only decide." He looked at the three of them for a long time. Then he glanced at the scroll before saying, "If this last part is true, how about I will give you your first mission?" Oh, outside of Konoha, in a clearing in the forest, Mizuki and Iruka were fighting. Blows were exchanged, and Mizuki was furious Iruka had managed to follow him and see through his plan. "Why are you doing this?" Iruka shouted. "Mizuki, shut up. I don't need Konoha. I just need the forbidden scroll, nothing else." Mizuki shouted back. "Die." Weapon met weapon. The two fought furiously, neither keen to lose. Iruka lost his own weapon at a careless moment and Mizuki turned crazy eyes to the brunette. Iruka looked up him with wide eyes, frozen where he stood. The traitor raised a kunai but before he could stab Iruka to death something stopped the hand from moving. Iruka fell to the ground as the adrenaline kick vanished, staring at the man who had suddenly appeared before the two. The man that had just saved his life. Black as the night he stood rigid, blocking Mizuki's kunai with his own. Obsidian eyes stared at the traitor long and hard, until Mizuki tried to get away. Only he could not move. Shadows clung to his legs and he began screaming. Iruka watched in fascination as the black-clothed man put away the kunai, put his hands together in a seal and said, almost lazily, "Shadow technique. Black Knight." The shadows lazily began trickle upwards, winding around the traitor. They looked like slick flames and Iruka saw them inching closer to the crazed man's neck. Mizuki's shouting was cut short as the shadows wound themselves around his neck, squeezed tightly and the man fell down after a while, dead. The black-haired man hoisted the forbidden scroll up and turned to look at the brunette. His emotionless eyes did not change. He put a finger to his lips though and said, "Not a word about me, Iruka-san." A Konoha Hittite flashed by the man's neck. The next moment he vanished into the shadows, leaving a very confused Iruka behind. Was that a Nara or what? Oh. The next day, Naruto sat with Hinata again, making the girl smile. Naruto himself was just plain bored despite that he had good company with him. He wondered since he had changed some things already if he would get another team. He thought it would probably not happen since he still had his bad results in the past. He had grown smarter during the years, but reading was still not a favorite thing of his, unless he could read about whatever he wanted. Then it was perfectly fine. Iruka hawked and looked around. Naruto saw no signs that the teacher had been near death just the night before and was a bit relieved about that. Now, he said, time for getting into teams and hearing who your teacher is. Team 1 is. Naruto sat with his head in his hands, looking bored. Hinata hid her smile behind her hand, pretending to cough. The blonde man in disguise looked at her, a bit amused. He wondered if she had been like this in his past as well and just hid it very well, or he had been too ignorant to even notice her, poor girl, or it was thanks to his actions the day before. For some reason, he had a feeling it was the former. Maybe she was not as different as the one he knew in the future. Team 7, Iruka read up. Haruno Sakura, Uchiha Sasuke and Uzumaki Naruto. Your teacher will be Hatake Kakashi. Sakura squealed at the aspect of being with Sasuke. Said boy ignored everything else and Naruto tilted his head. Will you be okay with them? Hinata asked him and the man in disguise turned to look at her. I mean, Sakura can be pretty mean and Sasuke, she seemed to know more about the three's relationship than Naruto thought, but there was something he needed to find out. Oi, he said, puzzled. She blinked, confused. He leaned closer and said in a whisper, like a big secret, you didn't stutter, Hinata-san. She blinked again, a small blush on her cheeks. I didn't, she said. Well now you did but not before. They were interrupted by Iruka announcing the 8th team was Hinata herself, Kiba and Shino. Their teacher would be Kurenai just like before, Naruto mused. Also Team 10 was the same. Naruto never knew the other teams and therefore had no idea if they had changed or not. Although as they had stayed the same, he opted the others had as well. So, Iruka said and getting up. Your teachers will come here and get you soon. Good luck. Naruto sat back and sighed. It would take Kakashi at least 2 hours before getting there. What to do during that time? Hinata turned to talk to him again and he spent the first half hour talking to her. Then Kurenai came and Hinata bowed a little to the man in disguise before following the red-eyed woman, almost skipping in happiness. Naruto found it very amusing, and could not help but smile. It felt a bit weird to smile, having gone so long without doing so, but he knew he could get used to it. He also had a feeling he would be smiling a lot in the near future to come. Soon Team 7 was alone while waiting for their teacher. Sakura went to sit next to Sasuke and tried without success strike a conversation with him. Sasuke ignored her, but after a while and with no stupid Naruto interruptions they both turned to look at said Naruto, who was reading a book and ignoring them both. Sakura gaped while Sasuke's eyes widened slightly. Naruto was reading a book and he was quiet. This day was far too weird to be true. Oh, when Kakashi entered the classroom, he was met by a shrilly female voice that screamed. You're late. He winced at the tone and looked at a pink-haired girl who had furious eyes, hands clenched at her sides and dressed in a bright red dress. All right, her dressing needed to be discussed. Such colors would scream, I'm here, come and kill me already. A black-haired boy sat by the window, only glancing at the man before returning to stare at whatever an Uchiha stared at. The ice prince that needed some serious melting. Or get that stick out of his ass so he could be a bit more polite. So where was the third one, the container of Kyuubi? Kakashi. One eye swept over the classroom until he saw a boy sitting at the far end with a book covering his face. He saw a bit of blonde hair, skinny hands holding the book. Meet me up at the roof, Kakashi said, pointing upwards, in 5 minutes. Then he disappeared. Oh, he could look at them more closely as they were at the roof. Naruto looked at him for a moment and then away, like Kakashi was a disinteresting insect not worth the attention. The man's eyebrow twitched just a bit at that. Dismissing him that easily would not sit well with the brat. So, you are my new team? He asked. I already know your names, but how about your likes, dislikes, hobbies and dreams? Can't we start with you, sensei? Sakura asked. We don't know anything about you. Me. Oh, okay. I'm Hatake Kakashi. Things I like and things I hate, I don't feel like telling you that. My dreams for the future, never really thought about it. As for my hobbies, I have lots of hobbies. Now Pinky, your turn. Sakura's vein ticked at the lack of information and nickname, but she started anyway. I like learning new things, I dislike Ino Pig and Naruto no Baka, and my dream is, well, maybe I shouldn't say it in the open. By the way she was glancing at Sasuke, Kakashi knew exactly what she was going to say. And my hobbies are learning, and, once more she looked over at Sasuke. Kakashi sighed and turned to the boy in question. You then, I don't like anything, I hate a lot and I have a goal in my life, to kill one person. He did not say any hobbies, not like it was really necessary to say. Dear old Sasuke, still the same, Naruto thought and nearly shook his head. Drop the goal already, brat, it's not going to do neither of you any good. A heat spread from his hidden scroll, and the man in disguise discreetly placed a hand there, calming the leaking chakra with a determined shove of his own. No need to alert Kakashi. Okay, Kakashi said. Only Blondie left then. Like nothing, hate nothing, have no dreams, no hobbies, Naruto answered flatly, looking steadily at Kakashi. Nothing, Kakashi questioned. And if I did have something I liked or disliked, why should I say it to you? The man in disguise said, quirking an eyebrow. It would only give you a chance to get closer to me, and maybe hurt someone I like. Kakashi wanted to chuckle. A bold mouth and a confident mind. This would be fun. Alright, we will meet tomorrow at 7 for our first training session, the man announced cheerfully, making them snap out of their stupor. We'll be on training field 7 and after tomorrow, we will begin with missions. What kind of training session will it be? Sakura asked. Just to test your abilities, Kakashi said. Don't be late. Same to you, Sensei, Naruto said. We finished. Yes, the man said. Good, Naruto said, stepping to the edge of the roof. Have a nice day. He jumped to the next building and in the next moment he disappeared in a swirl of wind. The three gaped after him. Oh, was that necessary? Naruto looked over at Gaara who jabbed his chin towards the three on the roof. Shikamaru yawned and changed page in his book. Yes it was, Naruto said. They need a shock once in a while. They were once more in their Shiroi, Kuroi and Akai guises, and on their way to the Hokage Tower. Naruto nudged Shikamaru in the side with his foot and said, Come on, we're going. The other man got up and put away the book. In the next moment, they vanished from sight. Naruto took a look around the empty training field and then plopped down on the ground. He put his chin in his hand, and began to think. He, Shikamaru and Gaara would be sent on missions that would interfere with Team 7's training or missions or their own. Therefore he had to make a perfect copy of himself that could act like him without raising suspicions. It was not hard to make a copy but how to make it remain for as long as he wished it. And stand against hits and the like as being in Team 7 did not mean a dance on roses. Kage Bunshin would not last 5 minutes, Naruto knew that. His hands itched to get out his scrolls but as the others in his team could arrive at any minute that would be rather stupid. Instead he closed his eyes and started going through techniques he knew, already looking forward for some time alone so he could get his technique scroll out and check through. He heard something rustling, someone landing in a tree further away, then Kakashi's chakra but he made no move to indicate he knew the copy nin was there. The man was early. Had he always been early? Maybe he wanted to see how his team worked out without him. He must have gotten a good laugh now and then at their stupid fights. Naruto opened his eyes when Sasuke came. The black-haired boy sat down and did not say anything. Naruto glanced at him with disinterest before closing his eyes once more and continued going through the techniques he had encountered during the years. Either he had seen a lot, or he was just slow with going through them because it felt like it never would end. Oh, Kakashi watched the two boys from his spot in a tree a small distance away and went over the information he had over Naruto once more. According to all the teachers in the academy, the blonde was loud, bad-mouthed, loved pranks, dressed in orange all the time and was bad at everything except for his so-called sexy no jutsu. So how did he pass the last test flawlessly? How come the boy came to the academy for the tests, so unlike how he had been the day before? Normally Naruto always tried to pick a fight with Sasuke, so why did he not react now? He was interrupted by Naruto rising up. Sasuke glanced up as the boy walked towards the small lake nearby. Where are you going? The Uchiha finally asked. I'm bored, Naruto replied in a prefect bored tone. Kakashi was faintly amused by it. I'm going to train. In the water. Never heard of water walking. Naruto said, looking at the black-haired boy. Kakashi gaped. Water walking. Few newbie genins knew about that and Naruto most certainly had not been one of them last time the copy nin checked. As if to prove that Kakashi had wrong about everything about him, Naruto stepped out on the water without sinking although he had to balance a bit in the beginning. The boy walked on the water until he came to the deep parts, fairly confident in himself. Sasuke stared at him, anger evident in his eyes. How did he dare show such power? How did he dare having learnt something that he, the Uchiha Sasuke could not do? Naruto ignored the two of them and sat down cross-legged, keeping a smooth level of chakra rush through his body. For a moment Kyuubi made him unstable and he shot out his arms without thinking, keeping himself balanced. The demon muttered an apology and withdrew his chakra, allowing Naruto to sit steadily. There he resumed his thinking position and closed his eyes. Kakashi stared at the blonde boy. He had never seen a more relaxed position in the aspects of training water walking with a genin. Normally the children would struggle to be able to stand in the water at the beginning. How had Naruto learned such perfect chakra control? Oh, Sakura came to the training field and saw first Sasuke. She greeted on him despite being far away, quite loudly you can imagine, but he appeared not to hear her. His eyes were fixed on something else. Confused, she looked so see what he was staring at, and promptly began to stare as well. Naruto no Baka was sitting on water. That was water walking training, and no genin could master it easily. She of course had only read about it because she practically swallowed any books about shinobi training and such she came over. Good at studying but she was not sure she would be able to do water training anytime soon. Kakashi finally made his appearance, making the pink-haired Kunoichi and the black-haired boy to turn to him. He smiled at them, looked at Naruto and called out. Blondie, come here. Naruto opened his eyes and looked at his teacher irritably at the nickname. Nonetheless, he rose up, a bit wobbly mind you as he never really sat on water and walked into shore. Kakashi tried to read the boy's face, but Naruto's face was like a blank sheet that made Kakashi uneasy. One other piece of information was that Naruto always grinned widely. So far he had not seen a smile on the boy's face. Well then, Kakashi said, clapping his hands together and they looked at him. Time to check your skills, and see what you need to improve on. Naruto nearly blinked. This was not how it had been the first time around. Had something changed with Kakashi? Or maybe it was him who had made Kakashi change. Oh well, something had changed and that was it. He did not dwell long over such things as this. You're just lazy, brat. Naruto mentally smacked the fox over the head. First of all, I want to check your taijutsu, Kakashi said. Sakura and Sasuke will fight against each other first. Then I will check Naruto. You two can begin. The two glared at the blonde because he got to fight against their teacher but Naruto had already turned and walked to closest tree. There he sat down and crossed his legs, looking annoyingly relaxed. Kakashi raised an eyebrow but followed. He turned to look at the two children, now in basic taijutsu stance and said. Begin. The two began immediately and Kakashi watched them with his chin leaned onto his palm. Although Sakura's moves were flawed, the man saw she had learned the movements perfectly. It was just she never went outside of them, never made an own that did not match with what she had been taught. Sasuke, however, invented kicks and punches as he fought. Kakashi knew Sakura needed to practice taijutsu and be told to make up her own moves. When she had done that, she would become good in taijutsu. And he still had to talk to her about those clothes. After a few minutes, the girl was struck down. She looked embarrassed to have been defeated, but Sasuke did not take much notice of it. That's enough, the gray-haired shinobi said, and the two looked at him. Sasuke, excellent taijutsu, keep going on that. Sakura, while you do know the moves, you need to train them to make it more fluent. Also, not everything is like you have learned, make up own moves as those you were learned in the academy can't always protect you. Now, Naruto, I believe it's your turn. The man in disguise rose up and walked out to the field. Don't fall on your nose, Naruto baka. Sakura called out after him. Sakura, Kakashi said sternly. I didn't hear Naruto saying such things to you, so what gives you the right? It's just he sucks in everything, the girl said and giggled behind her hand. He will fall flat on his face, sensei, just watch. Naruto turned his head towards her and Kakashi was convinced he saw the murder intent in the child's eyes and was sure for a moment he had to restrain the boy from killing her. But in the next moment the strange glint disappeared and Naruto spoke, calmly. Sakura, refrain yourself from speaking of things you don't know anything about. She looked at him strangely. Normally he would have flat out denied it and then gone on of much he loved her. Now there was not even a Chan after her name as he had always called her. Naruto turned to Kakashi and raised an eyebrow. The man nodded and said, you can begin. Naruto blurred out from sight and in the next moment Kakashi had to block a fist from hitting his face. He jumped away, startled at the fast movement, and Naruto followed without battling an eye. The boy did not let him have a break but attacked in every way he could. Kakashi managed pretty well at dodging for the first few minutes and then he heard Sakura yell. Is that even a fighting style, Naruto baka? Naruto's next kick felt a lot stronger and the teacher was sent flying into a tree. He stared at the boy who now had stopped. Never before had a genin managed to make him fly backwards. The blonde slowly moved his body into a taijutsu stance and waited. Kakashi blinked at the stance. He did not recognize it. What kind of style is that? Kakashi asked as he rose up. My own, Naruto replied. Kakashi charged this time and knocked Naruto away. The boy made a flip in the air and landed safely, his eyes slightly bigger, which meant he did not expect that. The boy blurred away in the next second and Kakashi looked around. Then he felt pain in his left leg and jumped away before Naruto could complete the violent kick. He landed a bit away and gasped as he felt his sore muscle. That felt like a kick from an unrestrained guy. Alright, let's stop, Kakashi said and the boy slowly relaxed. Excellent taijutsu, Naruto, and please don't try that kick on me again. That hurt. The last came out as a whine and finally the man had lured a smile out of the boy. Naruto came forth and said, you're pretty strong, sensei. That kick should have broken your leg. Kakashi stared. What the hell did you do? He asked. I sent my chakra into your leg, Naruto said as a matter of fact. I focus chakra in the spot I want it, I connect it with you and send the chakra out. Given a little more time, I would have broken your leg. The man rose up slowly and said while scratching his head. Seems like I don't have to check chakra control on you. A pretty amazing trick. Mind if I tell it to a friend of mine? Why not? Naruto said with a shrug. It's not a secret really. Sasuke looked at Naruto as the man in disguise came walking. Where did you learn to fight like that? The black-haired boy demanded to know. By watching, Naruto replied flatly. Alright, don't start an argument, Kakashi said and waved his hands around, seeing Sasuke's eyes narrow. Let's see now what we will continue with. Oh, Naruto left the training field in deep thought. He still needed to train on genjutsus. No big surprise there, since he never understood it when he was younger and killed his enemies too quickly when he got older. He would not ask Sakura for help. Shikamaru and Gaara were not so good with genjutsus either, but Kurenai was a master in it. How was he supposed to approach her about it? As Naruto, or as Shiroi? Decisions, however, I need to eat before that. As Kyuubi called him a hungry fool, Naruto mentally kicked him. Oh, Kurenai looked on as her team fooled around a bit with a smile, Akamaru barking and Hinata laughing at something Kiba said while Shino quietly listened. She felt like they had to be good friends in order to work well and therefore let them be with only each other after she had tested them. Kurenai-san. She turned around at the voice and widened her eyes. A man dressed completely in white stood behind her with frosty blue eyes and a motionless face. But his tone was polite, and he continued. I apologize for have startled you, Kurenai-san. No, it's fine, she said and relaxed slightly as she saw the Konoha Hitai on his belt. Forgive me, but I don't seem to recognize your face. I am not supposed to be that known, the man said and sat down. But I come at the suggestion from Hokage-sama. On what? She asked, curious of what the Sandaime had suggested to this strange man. You are quite known for your genjutsu skills, the man continued. And, I am unfortunately not quite as skilled at genjutsu as I am required to be, he said and looked over at her team briefly. So far I have survived without knowing much about this skill, but Sarutobi-sama wished me to learn. And that's where I come in? She asked, wide-eyed. He smiled a bit at her and said, yes. Sarutobi-sama said with your skills you would be able to make even a person like me better at genjutsu. Or at least being able to cancel them out when I need to. I don't have anything against it, I never caught your name. I am known as Shiroi and therefore my name must be Shiroi, the man said vaguely. Shiroi-san, she said, almost to herself. When are you free to practice? I have irregular hours so to speak, Shiroi said and looked at her. I can be called to a mission 3 in the morning, or 7 in the evening. I must take whatever chance I have. I have my team as well, so mostly I will be free at evenings when I'm not on a mission, she said. Shiroi nodded and said, I am free tonight, as far as I know. Sarutobi-sama promised to try keeping me in the village during the time I need to learn genjutsu. Then our first lesson will be tonight, she said. How about 6? We'll meet by the Hokage Tower. That sounds perfectly fine, the man said and rose up smoothly. Is that your team? He pointed towards the 3 children. She nodded and said. They became a team just yesterday. Shiroi looked at them for a long time and then said. Just yesterday? I would have guessed they had been a team for months. She turned to look at him, but he was already gone. Oh, oi, we're going to run in with Team 7. Shiroi looked at Akai who only pointed. The blonde man turned his head and looked as well. They were heading straight to where Team 7 was training at the moment. Shiroi had finally come across a technique that left him able to create a clone that would not disappear until he wanted it to. It had not been where he thought it would be, which annoyed him a little bit. But now it was done, so the Naruto with Team 7 was just a very good clone. So what? He finally said. They may need to know about us. I can pop up whenever they need me, and therefore they should know I work for the Hokage. Does Kakashi know? Kuroi asked. Nope. Shiroi replied. Sarutobi said we would be a secret to most of the village, especially to Danzo. Those 2 men like to play with each other, and right now Sarutobi is winning with us on his side. Quiet or they will hear you, Akai hissed. Kakashi was the first to notice, Sasuke the second. Sakura backed away while the clone of Naruto cocked his head, eyes suspicious. The copy nin narrowed his eye at the sight of the 3 unfamiliar men and said. Who are you? Shiroi looked at him, bored, and then turned to Akai. Don't ignore us, Sakura shouted. Sakura, Manners, the gray-haired man reminded. Well, where are theirs? She asked. The blonde man was just rude, not even telling us his name. Suddenly shadows locked her in place and she gave out a shriek. Kakashi grew tense and looked around, trying to locate where the shadows came from. Kuroi, they heard a deep but monotone voice say. She is a Konoha kunoichi. And a genin on top of that. So what? They turned to look at the three, and saw that the blonde and the black-haired man had entered a staring contest. The shadows floated from the black-haired and black-dressed man's body. Kakashi's eye narrowed. Was it a Nara or what? She insulted you, the black-dressed man said with a shrug. Kuroi, I'm warning you. But Shiroi-sama. They all stared at Shiroi. What had he done to earn such a title? Shiroi ignored them, took a hold of Kuroi and said. Insult or not, she's just a kid. Let her go, and act your age. It was better to give them a fearsome reputation than having Team 7 seeing them as three arguing men. Kuroi really wanted to stick his tongue out but held it in and let the shadows retreat from the girl. She fell down and the Team 7 went to her. I'll tell Hokage-sama about you. She cried out, massaging her sore leg. Then you will regret it. Hokage-sama, the red-headed man said, raising an eyebrow. I don't think so. No matter, Shiroi said as he released Kuroi. The man sent the blonde a half-hearted glare. Kuroi had never really liked Sakura, since she had been pretty rude as young. She isn't hurt anyway, so why worry? We have to hurry if we are to make it to grass before nightfall. Why does he have to send us out on such short notice? The black-haired man whined. Because he's the Hokage, Shiroi replied tonelessly. What Sarutobi-sama wants, we provide it for him. Now let's go. The three vanished before Kakashi got a chance to do anything. He was left to stare at the place they had been standing on just moments before with his mouth open. The same thought went through his mind as well as Sasuke's and Sakura's. Who were those three? With a start, Naruto woke up and he blinked a few times, staring at the roof. Then he looked at the clock and blinked again. 3.5 hours, that was longer than he usually slept. The man yawned lightly and sat up, looking around the tiny apartment and was glad he had gotten in a bed that he could actually sleep comfortable in. He got up and went to the bathroom to freshen up. Within minutes he emerged again, in the henge as his younger self and pulled out the clothing he was going to wear. He gathered up his hair and realized it was not quite enough for a ponytail. He growled lightly and altered the henge slightly, making the hair a bit longer, then he put the hair up and reached for his hitai, tying it around his neck. For today and the next few days he was going to be with Team 7 as Sarutobi had no immediate need for him, Gaara and Shikamaru. He leapt out from the window and jumped across rooftops until he reached Shikamaru's and Gaara's house. He entered and saw Gaara was already up, not having changed into his henge yet. The man was reading a scroll, sitting by the low table in the living room and looked up once Naruto entered. Morning, the red-headed man said before returning to his scroll. Where's Shikamaru? Asleep, Gaara said. Figured I'd let him. Naruto nodded and sat down. Why are you in a henge so early? Gaara said, looking him over. Because we're gonna have our first real mission, Naruto said. Last time I had to complain my way to it, and now it's just handed to us. Which one is it? The one with Zabuza and Haku. Oh. Gaara had heard the story once, when Naruto had been too drunk to keep it inside. The blonde had never really gotten over their deaths. What are you going to do this time? Gaara's voice startled him, and Naruto looked up at his friend. Save them, was his answer. They deserve life. I see. You won't need our help then. No, Naruto said. I'll handle it. You guys relax. You know, it won't hurt you if you yourself relaxed once in a while, Gaara reminded. It's not like everyone is going to die because you sleep longer than 2 hours. The blonde man ducked his head, so he had been discovered. Naruto, I know you, the red-headed man said. What the hell? The man was a mind reader as well. Somehow, Naruto was not sure if he wanted to know just how Gaara knew and was blissfully interrupted from his thoughts with the redhead continuing, "You don't sleep, you work until you collapse and you refuse to relax. Now, what time were you going to meet with your team?" 9. It's only 6. I wasn't tired. Liar. Sigh. There was no use lying to the man. I couldn't sleep, Naruto said. And I don't want to. Gaara frowned and then reached over the table. He took Naruto's hand lightly and tugged. Naruto raised an eyebrow, definitely not fitting the young look, but complied and scooted over to the red-headed man's side. Gaara had to admit that his friend looked a bit small as a 12-year-old, not to mention pretty adorable, never saying that aloud to Naruto though, if he wished to keep his head where it was. With the annoying clothes gone, too much orange. And that ridiculous smile, or rather annoying not to mention half-fake grin, he looked more vulnerable than the red-headed man wanted to admit. Gaara pulled Naruto close, ignoring disguised man's protest, and held him against his chest, an action that surprised them both. Neither had really been that much for touching someone else. People were too scared of Gaara and Naruto had learned his lesson through bruising, don't touch people because it will only hurt in the end. The blonde man eventually stopped struggling, knowing that once Gaara had decided on something you could not make him change with ease, and simply rested against the other man however reluctant he was to do that. Eventually Naruto's eyes closed, and before he knew it he was asleep. Gaara grinned, mission accomplished. Oh, the blonde man in disguise woke up slowly to a hand stroking his hair, something only Iruka had done on occasion when he had been real little. Naruto blinked and looked up at Gaara sleepily. The blonde was lying down, Gaara seated next to him. Morning, again, Gaara said. What time is it? Naruto asked as he rubbed his eyes. 8:30, the man replied. Thought you wanted some breakfast before going. Would be nice, the blonde man said. I'll go and get something ready then, the red-headed man said and got up. Gaara, Naruto asked before said man could leave the room. What? Thanks, the man in disguise said, not looking at the redhead and they both knew it was not for the offer of breakfast. Gaara smiled, answering, you're welcome. Oh, Naruto met Kakashi by the tower 10 to 9. If the disguised man was surprised to see the shinobi in time, he did not show it. Morning, Naruto, the man said, looking up briefly from his book. Morning, sensei, Naruto replied, feeling stupid calling someone who was actually younger than him for sensei. Oh well, he could not exactly stop calling Kakashi that, the man got easily suspicious if he did. To distract himself, and have something to do, Naruto looked at the cover of the book Kakashi was reading. Was he surprised to read Ika Ika Paradise on the cover? Damn pervert, at least some things never changed. You're an early riser aren't you? What do you mean? Naruto asked. I saw you leave your apartment around 6, Kakashi said. That was pretty early. Oh, I couldn't sleep and went over to a friend. I had a nap there, Naruto said, not even battling an eyebrow at finding out Kakashi was up by 6. Maybe having calling the gray-haired man for lazy in the future had been a bit wrong. You could say I woke up a half hour ago. A friend, he's not a shinobi, Naruto said and looked at the sky. He lives with his father, I visit them from time to time. Oh, another thing that Kakashi had no idea about. Naruto glanced at the man and saw the copy nin look at him over the cover of the book, however discreet he tried to be. Is there something you want to ask, sensei? Naruto said, startling the man. Not really. Just didn't know you had a friend who wasn't a shinobi. He's too lazy to be one anyway, Naruto said with a slight smile. A part of it was true, it was a miracle that Shikamaru even had the energy to have become a shinobi. Too lazy, huh, Kakashi said, glad to be able to see a smile on his student's face, although small. Sounds like any Nara in this village. Naruto did not stiffen but only replied. He sure fits in with them, although I think he likes sleeping far too much. Soon enough Sakura and Sasuke came, and it made Naruto close up again and resume his normal blank expression. Kakashi did not like it but could do little to make him change. Oh, an hour later they were moving out from the village with Tazuna. The man was drunk as old times, but this time Naruto did not complain. He simply trudged along, looking around at scenes he had seen before. It had not changed much in the future, Naruto mused as he glanced around. Kakashi was reading his book as usual, being in front of their client. Sasuke walking behind Tazuna and Sakura seemed to want to hold his hand. Sasuke's eyebrow would have a permanent twitch any moment. The man in disguise felt slightly sorry for the boy. Naruto himself was walking to the side, not too far from Kakashi but also not too close. He wanted his space, and the copy nin seemed to understand that. When they set up camp for the night, Naruto was signed up as the first watch. Shrugging, he went and sat down against a tree. He watched them fall asleep and sighed lightly. He had to plan what to do. He should kill Gato first and deal with Zabuza and Haku later. With that in mind, he focused partly on planning and partly on watching over his team and Tazuna while they slept. Oh, Kakashi woke up in time for his shift to see Naruto sitting not far away in a meditation position. If that was not strange enough, one of his eyes was completely closed while the other open. The copy nin blinked at the scene and was startled when Naruto said, "What looks so funny, sensei, that you must stare at me? Why is one of yours eyes closed?" Kakashi asked. "Oh, I can focus better," Naruto said. "I use one eye to watch and the other to amuse myself." Kakashi stared. "What the hell? Amuse yourself?" The copy nin said uncertainly. "Reading," Naruto said. "I have read some books so many times I'm able to remember them, word for word." At least it was books he liked, and not boring ones. He would never touch a boring book unless someone ordered him to. "Right. What the hell?" Kakashi stared at him. "Are you joking with me?" The man finally asked. "Nope. You're going to let me go to sleep." "Sorry. Yeah, I got it now so you can rest." Naruto closed his other eye and slowly let the head fall forward. His breathing deepened, and before Kakashi could say anything, such as if Naruto wanted to lie down, the man in disguise was really asleep. Oh, Naruto woke up in the morning and saw Kakashi was watching him. "Don't you have pain in your neck?" the copy nin asked. The man in disguise considered this, and then rolled his head and shoulders. A small twinge gave him the answer, but it would be gone soon. "It'll pass," Naruto replied. "Are the others up?" "Sakura is getting some water and Sasuke is collecting wood. Tazuna is asleep." Naruto nodded, and got up from his position. Sleeping in the meditation position had been rather easy thanks to some tips Gaara had given him. And he had slept for more than 2 hours, that was nice for a change. Starting to do light stretches, Naruto decided to let Kakashi's gazing at him slide. Oh, Naruto looked at the water on the road, and sighed. How could he have missed that one the last time? It was in plain sight. Well, he was not very good at paying attention when he was young, and even to this day he did have a lack of concentration from time to time. Of course, he was also doing other things the last time, like annoying the hell out of everyone else. Naruto could not really remember why he did that, but he was not going to do it again. He himself knew that really started to trigger feelings like, kill, kill, kill. Instead he stopped discreetly by the water, kneeling down and waving Kakashi on. The copy nin hesitated for a moment, then walked on. Once alone, the blonde placed a piece of paper on the water and made a seal with his hand, activating what was written on the paper, courtesy of Shikamaru, who had done some various research on seals while not having a mission. Instantly the water turned to ice. Naruto grinned. It would take the two brothers a while to break the seal, and by then, it was all going to be over. He jogged lightly to catch up with the small group before they could notice he was too far behind. Could not have that now, could he? "Oh, are we there soon?" Sakura asked. "Not so far ahead," Tazuna said. "You said that an hour ago." Naruto had to mutter under his breath and Sasuke reluctantly agreed from where he walked next to the man in disguise. And before that, you said it again, and fucking again, Sasuke's lips twitched, his control slipping. Naruto continued to glare at the man's back. Yeah, he liked Tazuna but he had forgotten how slow the journey was. What are you muttering about, Naruto? Kakashi asked, turning to look at the blonde. Nothing sensei, Naruto said. Just want to be there already. First mission outside the village tend to be a bit long, the copy nin said. You'll get used to it soon. About fucking time, the man muttered. I hate being bored. This time a small smile flickered across Sasuke's face, so quick only Naruto had chance to see it. He inwardly smirked. He was making some progress with the Ice Prince. Naruto was more than ready by the time he felt Zabuza's chakra. He heard the giant sword soar through the air and then Kakashi screamed. Everyone, get down. He made a light crouch and felt the wind over his head as the sword went over them. The solid thud told him it had hit a tree. The former mist shinobi had a good aim. Well, if it isn't Hatake Kakashi the copy nin. Naruto looked up at Zabuza and managed to hold the smile in. He was not supposed to smile at an enemy but man he was happy to see the guy alive and breathing. Even if he did not know Zabuza at all, he knew the man should have lived the first time around. Everyone, get back, Kakashi said. This man is way above your level. Naruto, still in his crouched position, brought out a scroll and opened it. At the first symbol he placed his hand and released it. A moment later he held a blood-red shuriken in his hand, its edges quickly filling with his chakra in their custom-made channels. This one had followed him, along with many other things, from the future and was the only one of its kind. Seems like one of your brats are ready. The rest of the group looked on as Naruto stood up, holding the shuriken in his hand. What is so special about that shuriken, brat? Zabuza said. Let's see which one is stronger. Your famous sword Kubikiri Hako, one or my shuriken, Naruto said with a chilly smile, casting away some of the young-looking features in his face. Seems like you've been sneak reading the bingo book, Zabuza said with a grin. He looked over at the shocked Kakashi and continued, by looking at your teacher's face, something tells me he didn't know that. Always be prepared, Naruto said. Plus I was bored and got my hands on a copy. The demon from Hidden Mist jumped down, sword in his hand. You sure you want to go up against me? When I was your age. Your hands were already soaked in blood, Naruto said. That's old news, man. You are the demon from Hidden Mist. Zabuza's grin widened underneath the bandages that was wrapped around the lower part of his face. Seems like it will be a bit more interesting killing you than copycat Kakashi, he said and swung his sword. It went like a boomerang through the air towards Naruto. The man in disguise turned the shuriken so it was vertical at his side and shouted out. Kenkas. 2. The shuriken began to spin, chakra moving out as a wind, enough to make Naruto's clothes flap in the wind, the open jacket behind him. Zabuza's eyes widened as the sword's sharp edge met the shuriken's spinning blades and went backwards. Don't worry, Naruto said. I've only had Kenkas for a little while, but I've realized it can deflect most blades. Not even one of the swords of the 7 swordsmen from Mist seems to discourage it. Said sword landed, blade dug into the earth, not far from the man. Zabuza looked on as the blades calmed down and now looked like any other shuriken in the boy's hand. That's no genin material, he said lowly, making sure to keep an eye on Kakashi and the others as well. The copy nin had moved on hand to his Hitai-8, ready to remove it at a moment's notice. Chunin at the very least. A genin can have more chakra than usual, Naruto said with a shrug. I guess I have. Zabuza walked up to his sword and got it up before looking between the Konoha shinobis. The girl was no match, he could see that directly. She was shaking despite her best efforts of not doing it. She held a kunai between her hands, ready to defend the bridge worker. But her eyes showed she was terrified. That occasionally happened when genins moved from simple D missions to a life-threatening situation outside their village. The black-haired brat was not as nervous and scared, instead he was focused and could be a bit more troublesome than the pinky brat. Kakashi would be dangerous, if allowed to take off his Hittite. And he would when he feels it becoming dangerous. But the blonde, there was something off about him. Something he did not like. It was a twisting feeling when Zabuza looked into those blue eyes, something that frightened him. Naruto grinned. Seems like the demon from Mist felt the presence of a real demon, a Biju. Motivated by this, Kyuubi increased his chakra just the tiniest bit and Naruto allowed a mere edge of the demon's killer intent out. Sakura froze in place when she felt the intent, her eyes widened tears at the corners of them. She felt her heart hammering in her chest, ready to give up on her. She was so scared, but had no idea of what. Sasuke looked around, wondering where the hell the killer intent came from. It seemed from everywhere, like the earth itself had raised its protest of a battle that had yet to come in action. Kakashi was staring at Naruto. This was Kyuubi's killer intent, no mistake. Was the blonde really in so little control of the demon? Was he going to lose himself in the demon's seductive powers and allow Kyuubi to take over? Zabuza felt his knees go weak when he felt the chakra. It was so full with power he could hardly breathe. The air crackled with tension, with fear and with hate. He could even smell it, a disgusting scent worming its way inside of him. Kid, just what the hell are you? Naruto looked at the man and said. Just another Konoha shinobi. Kenka's. The shuriken began to spin once more and this time Naruto threw it. He slapped his hands together and shouted. Wind release. Dancing wind. The blades widened and the slashes of the wind coming from them expanded until Zabuza felt he had to escape quickly. He jumped upwards and saw the blonde strike his hand upwards. To his horror, the blade changed direction and came speeding up towards him. Kakashi-sensei. Naruto shouted. The teacher looked startled at him. This may look easy, but it's exhausting as hell. That was a lie, but he had to play along. He was supposed to be 12. This was a technique he could easily use when he was 32 years old, but as 12 he should have a bit more trouble with it. Finish him off. Kakashi nodded and slid the Hittite up, revealing his Sharingan eye. Naruto looked up where Zabuza was and estimated the distance. Kakashi would perhaps get in a few hits before Haku would show up. Naruto let the shuriken drop and fell on one knee. Kyuubi grumbled in weak protest but said nothing. He knew they had to pretend, but that did not mean he enjoyed it. The shuriken landed with a thud on the ground and Naruto released the technique. It was not exhausting at all, but it was rather difficult to control Kenka's, and since Naruto had his lack in concentration moments he managed to create some chaos with it from time to time. Predictably, once Kakashi had Zabuza at his mercy, Haku showed up. Naruto watched the scene from his spot and then the disguised boy moved from the scene, Zabuza with him. Sakura fell to her knees, the now lack of tension making her body stop running on adrenaline. Naruto shook his head lightly at that as Sasuke had to help her up. In time, perhaps, in time. Tazuna helped as well, shaking but still standing. The old man had guts, and that was good. Naruto, are you alright? He looked up, surprised, and saw Kakashi holding out a hand for him. The blonde took it and got up. I'm fine, he said and went to get his shuriken. Just a bit windblown. Very funny, Kakashi said. He did not sound very amused. I mean it, are you alright? Yes, pretty much. Just no running, Naruto lied. Unless you really want me to fall flat on my face. He referred to their first day, when Sakura had said he would. Alright, no running. Naruto sealed the weapon again and rolled up the scroll, placing it back in his pouch. Now he got sight of Sakura and Sasuke. They were both staring shocked at him. They had after all never seen him use a weapon like that. When did you get that shuriken, Kenka's? Kakashi asked. My friend, you remember him? Yeah, his dad had it, Naruto said. Since he didn't know how to use it, He gave it to me. Told me once I got a hang of Kenkas it would be a hell of a weapon. It is already. Do you have any more secrets I should know about? The man asked, tone light. Not for the moment, Naruto replied, a grin on his face. Kakashi. I widened. It was the first time he had seen such a face on his student's face. Shall we maybe ask Tazuna-san why he has a missing nin after him? Kakashi nodded and turned to look at the bridge worker. Oh, Naruto felt more than saw his two teammates' looks as they walked towards Tazuna's house. He could not blame them, but it was still irritating. And the fact he soon had to put up with Inari's nagging was wearing him down. We're here. He looked up at the familiar house, although it had been quite some time since he last saw it, and was shuffled in with the others. Welcome back. Tsunami was happy to see her father and happily greeted on each of them. Inari stood by the door to the kitchen, sulking. Inari, say hello to our guests. What does it matter? The boy nearly shouted. They'll be dead in a few days anyway. Everyone who tries to go up against Gato dies. He ran out of the room. Naruto sighed mentally. That brat had not changed in any way. I'm very sorry about that, Tsunami said and smiled apologetically. He's just, well, no matter. You all must be starving. Please, come in, take a seat. Sakura volunteered to help the woman make some food to them all, and the two disappeared into the kitchen while the others sat down by the low table. Naruto sank down and gave a sigh of relief of finally being able to rest his legs. This journey had been troublesome. Damn, he was starting to sound like Shikamaru. The blonde man mentally screamed at the brunette before turning his attention to what happened around him. You really sure you're okay, Naruto? You look tired, Kakashi said, looking at the blonde closely. Since when did he get so observant? Maybe I am a bit tired, the blonde admitted. While using Kenkas had not even made him break a sweat, he wanted to sleep for a little bit. It was amusing how quickly he had started craving sleep. Oh, Kakashi looked at the blonde who was sleeping on one of the futons, having passed out like a light once the opportunity allowed him. He studied the face, so peaceful in sleep, and then turned his attention outside. There was something about the blonde he had missed. Something they all seemed to miss. He tried to think on people who knew the blonde and realized it probably was only Iruka who had any idea how he was. Yumino Iruka was the only one who seemed to give a damn about the blonde boy. Or that friend, whoever it was. Maybe he could get Naruto to introduce him to them. Kakashi felt he wanted to learn more about the blonde, as all of the information about him seemed to speak against him. He had to discover the boy on his own. Oh, Naruto looked around the gloomy town with a small sigh. He had left a copy with Team 7, now looking like himself. He was on his way for his own little mission, killing Gato and finding Zabuza and Haku. First thing though was killing Gato, because if Gato was dead the two did not have to kill Tazuna. Then it was to find those two and have a bit of a chat with them. He began walking down the street, wrapping the brown traveling cloak tighter around himself. Otherwise he was dressed in gray pants, brown boots and a brown shirt, not looking like a shinobi at all. He had hidden his hair underneath the hood of the cloak and moved without slowing down to step into any store. He wanted this over, and quickly so. Oh, maybe it would not go as quickly as he wanted. Naruto skillfully took his copy's place and it vanished in thin air, memories of the day rushing back to him. Sakura and Sasuke had trained their chakra control while Kakashi and Naruto had helped Tazuna with the house. Then he had not missed anything, good. This allowed him to sit down outside while waiting for dinner. Tsunami had wanted to do it on her own, shooing both shinobis outside into the evening sun, and think up with a plan. Gato's place was well guarded, and not something you just could jump into and start hacking away enemies. Or well, you could, but it did not necessarily mean he really should. Gato had a lot of greedy people on his side, people who cared little for anyone but themselves. Naruto knew he would more or less hack away at the enemies, just jumping in, but he wanted to know at least a vague layout of the place. Hence the reason why he had gotten his hands on the layout of the house, manor really, that Gato lived in. Kyuubi and he now went over it in his mind, as he had not managed to take a copy with him. Naruto. He looked up as Kakashi sat down next to him. You looked lost in thoughts. Maybe I was a bit, Naruto said with a shrug. What's up, sensei? Although weird calling Kakashi sensei, it was also a bit nice. He had missed it. Nothing much. No Ika Ika Paradise to read. I don't read it all the time, the man groaned. Only 99% of the time, the disguised man said with a small smirk. How rude, Kakashi said with a sniff. Oh, Haku was collecting some herbs early in the morning, while Zabuza was still sleeping. His recovery was proceeding nicely, but Haku wanted him to be as strong as possible before facing Kakashi and that blonde kid again. The other two on the team did not seem to be as dangerous, but one never knew for sure. He suddenly turned around, looking around the meadow, body tensed like ready for a blow to come. None came and he slowly relaxed. Glancing around once more, the boy decided it was enough herbs and moved away. Damn, that was close, Naruto said as he slid down onto the ground. Man, I forgot this was the place. What place? He whirled around where he sat, and he stared for a moment before his shoulders sagged. What are you two doing here? Gaara and Shikamaru glanced at each other first, then at him. Make sure you don't fuck up, plus you don't have to do everything on your own, Shikamaru replied. And no, don't start saying we should go back and you can handle it. We want to be part of this. Naruto looked at the two and seemed to relax. Fine, he said, adding a small smile at that. Gaara whooped in joy mentally. He had made the right choice. Naruto hated responsibility, and probably sharing it with him and Shikamaru made it all easier. So, the shadow user said. Mind telling us what you've found out so far? Oh, killing Gato won't be any problem, Shikamaru said once Naruto finished. How so? Just make sure he's alone and we're practically done. Only problem he never is. Make it so, Gaara said. Naruto thought for a little while and then said. How about, we defeat all of his henchmen and convince him we three is all he needs. Like the sound of it, Gaara said. I shouldn't use sand here, should I? No, don't, Naruto said. And Shikamaru, don't show off your shadow too much. Got it, boss, the man said, saluted, and the blonde snorted at that. Shall we go then? Gaara asked. The quicker we do this, the faster we are done.